Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name is Ivor MacFarlane and I work for IBM Software Group. And today we want to talk about change management. I introduce myself very briefly first. I've been working for IBM since 2007, been working in IT service management for about 30 years and working in service management for about 35 years. So I've come into this from the opposite direction to convention. Really like to introduce now Dennis Drogseth from EMA, who's going to be our expert and give us some interesting information on change this afternoon. So I'll just hand you over to Dennis, who'll tell you a little bit more about himself first.
Thanks, Ivor. I analyst with enterprise management indeed, and have been looking at issues regarding change management for multiple decades, although a lot more in the last, say, 15 years. Part of it's doing a book on CMDB systems, making change work in the age of cloud and agile. And a lot of what I've learned in researching and consulting around those projects is really not just limited to CMDB, it's really that cross-domain stakeholder challenge to make change work when you have a dynamic situation. And that's a lot of what I'd like to share this morning with you.
What kind of trends overall are you seeing in change management? Where do you see the world going?
That's a big question, Ivor. I'll stick to change management. I'd love to go off on where I really see the world going. But in change management, it's certainly an era of a lot more dynamic requirements and also beyond IT. In other words, change is not just happening within the IT organization. It's happening across multiple service providers. It's happening with partners, sometimes suppliers, in a total business ecosystem. How do you manage change across all those groups? I like to call that privately idle version 7. Who owns what? But some of the things we've also seen are benefits that are emerging that are very distinctive in this current era. Certainly the move to cloud is one, so you can manage change to support a business service across that hybrid world of cloud and non-cloud, internal and public. And we see a lot of new technologies beginning to make that happen. IBM certainly is in the forefront of that. Agile and DevOps, the two combined, big changes there in change management. We see I had one deployment that came from a development community for a CMDB, a configuration management database. They were Scrum-oriented, not idle-oriented, and they were ahead of operations and concerns with cross-domain, purchased the CMDB and pushed it into operations. And that, to me, was kind of a revelation of how one group that thinks creatively about service can lead the charge, whether it's development or operations. I think those are some of the more dramatic. And then one I think where IBM is very much a leader is in supporting change beyond IT. So IT services and capabilities can help in, say, facilities or other kinds of environments. Ivor, I'd love to get your perspective on some of the things you've seen over the years in change management, inside and within IT, and certainly in that era of what IBM is doing. That's distinctive.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting because, as you say, I've been doing this for a long time, and you've referred to the move to cloud and agile and the way everything is speeding up and technology is cloud. If we believe the hype these days, the cloud allows us to change absolutely anything in less than a millisecond. But that cross spectrum of change management hasn't changed, and good effective change management still involves people, and people have not necessarily speeded up that much. And I think there's some interesting challenges that we've seen and will see more of the conflict between the drive to speed and instantaneous responses that the technology allows us to have, and the fact that we still need to move some of these things at a human pace. And the other area that I'd like to pick up on from what you've said there, which I found interesting, is, and you can see it from my background, that I came into IT from service management, not the other way around, that the breaking down of the fences and how the cross-organizational, cross-silo changes have to happen. And it brings the analogy to some of the things we're doing with our software tools. Because our IT service management support tool has evolved and is a specialization almost of the Maximo product, we're really well placed to see those collaborations and to help break down those silos with the technology across. And work I know you're aware of at Melbourne Airport, where they're beginning to see not just change but incidents and other things as things that happen to the business and can be addressed and solved by the business as a whole, not treating IT as a unique and separate enterprise. I think the effect that will have on making cross-organizational change more successful is something we could look forward to, actually making life better for people.
Absolutely. I was very impressed with what I saw in Melbourne, or heard, I guess it was a phone call, so I visualized it from the phone. But that digital and mechanical combination of making everything come together, understanding airport operations as an extension of, in a sense, IT process that needs to be mapped out, defined, and optimized, that was quite insightful and very impressive.
I think that there's a lot for everyone to learn from what they've done there, I think. One of the other things that I've been interested in seeing come along in change management is the need for change management to use information. We've touched upon the need for the amount of data that's available. CMDBs are getting bigger and more wonderful. The final point that matters in change management is making a decision, and they tend to be based on knowledge and wisdom, not just data and information. And so getting actual knowledge to people in the change management enterprise, I think, is a challenge. And sometimes it's a challenge because people use technology to generate so much data that we can't actually get access to the knowledge that change management requires, and realizing that there is a need for that whole spectrum. And have you seen anything
Absolutely.
in your exercise or anecdotal evidence perhaps from the people you've talked to illustrate some of those features, Dennis?
Well, I think, you kind of create, you can create all kinds of Frankenstein monsters, and when you actually try to make progress, you can, you may be touching upon a lot of issues. Certainly one of the things that happens is you have, many environments may have 30, 40, even 100 different discovery or inventory tools or management tools or sources of data, right? Spread around silos globally that can multiply into multiple hundreds. Throw all that data together and you realize you're not necessarily making things better, especially if it's not reconciled or understood. A couple of quotes we've heard from, the laments from the change management abyss. We're drowning in data. One group said they have 20 million in redundant data in terms of yearly investments. So that's a real challenge, of course. But there are other challenges that go along with that. There's a need for automation, but there's also a need for communication. And a lot of the time, the two are conflicted. You need sometimes that communication before you can determine where you can automate. So you have a lot of the siloed issues, each group doing their own thing, not wanting to trust each other, wanting to own their own data, never share it, wanting to own their own tools, not share it or not recognize redundancy. Again, multiply that globally where you have locations, or you get mergers, and that can add a problem as well. And then prioritizing, as you said, you can't try to manage every change as if it's a critical one or a top priority, and that can be a disaster right there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comments from talking to a deployment was something an individual described as the hamster scenario. Making change work usually requires some change in process and better ways of sharing, and most people are resistant to that. And moreover, most people are stressed with trying to do everything on a day-to-day basis. So think of that hamster that's spinning around in its wheel. How often does that hamster going to think about, gee, maybe there's another way to go about this? So he saw a lot of his people in his own environment like hamsters in their wheel, not able to step back and make some necessary adjustments to change. But I've also seen some very strong successes with change management. I've seen reductions in time for making efficient changes from weeks and months to minutes once the dialogue is there and the automation is there. And again, I would stress dialogue comes first often, so you know where and how to automate. A lot of effective things like data center consolidation, move to cloud with vMotion being tracked effectively in context with change and performance, and also having that bridge between production and pre-production so that you're not throwing services into the real world without any insight into what that real world really is. Another real benefit of some of the emerging technologies, and again, IBM being a leader and bringing also analytics, automation, as well as service modeling to that change management landscape. So Ivor, any last thoughts on your side in terms of change management?
No, I think that we've probably covered an awful lot. I think the one good thing about being involved in change management is that whatever changes in the world, we're not going to do away with changes.
That's for sure.
So it's probably a good investment for a safe future.
That is for
It's
sure.
been really interesting listening to you, sir.
Yeah. Nobody's going to lose their job because everything became static all of a sudden.
I think that's unlikely.
Well, Ivor, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, sir. Been good.